In a small, peaceful town surrounded by green hills and thick forests, there lived two sisters who were as close as two people could ever be. They were twins, born just minutes apart, and they shared everything: laughter, secrets, dreams, and even their favorite hobbies. From the moment they learned to walk, they were inseparable. Their bond was so strong that it almost felt like they could read each other's minds. Everyone in the town knew them for their cheerful energy and the way they lit up any room they entered. The twins weren't just loved by their family. They were adored by everyone around them. Neighbors often joked that hearing their laughter was like listening to music. It was impossible not to smile when they were near. Whether it was helping an elderly neighbor carry groceries or organizing games for kids at the park, the twins always found ways to spread joy. They had this magical ability to make people feel better on their worst days. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. One ordinary morning started, like any other. The sun was shining brightly, birds chirped outside, and the air smelled fresh. One of the twins decided to go for her usual jog through the quiet trails near their home. She loved running because it gave her time to think and enjoy nature. But something unexpected happened that day. Midway through her jog, she suddenly collapsed. Her heart had stopped without warning. A passerby found her a short while later and called for help, but it was too late. By the time paramedics arrived, she was gone. When news of her passing reached her twin sister, it hit her like a thunderbolt. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. How could this happen? The thought of losing her other half was unbearable. Overwhelmed with shock and grief, she jumped into her car, determined to reach the hospital where her sister had been taken. She wanted answers, closure, anything to make sense of the tragedy. But fate had another cruel twist in store. As she sped down the winding road leading to the hospital, her mind raced with emotions. Tears blurred her vision, and before she knew it, her car skidded off the road. Witnesses said later that it looked like she lost control trying to avoid hitting a stray dog. The impact was severe, and despite efforts to save her, she succumbed to her injuries just hours after her twin. The news of their deaths spread like wildfire through the town. People couldn't believe what they were hearing. Losing one twin was devastating enough, but both on the same day? It felt surreal, like something out of a tragic storybook. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers gathered outside the twins' family home, offering hugs, tears, and words of comfort to their grieving parents. No one knew what to say, because no words could possibly ease the pain of such a loss. For the parents, the days that followed were a blur of numbness and heartbreak. Every corner of their house reminded them of their daughters, their laughter echoing in the living room, their shoes left by the door, their favorite books stacked neatly on the shelves. Simple tasks like making breakfast or watering the plants became overwhelming reminders of the void left behind. Sleep evaded them, and when it came, it brought nightmares instead of rest. Despite their unimaginable grief, the parents knew they had to honor their daughters in some way. So they began planning a joint funeral service. It wasn't just about saying goodbye. It was about celebrating the incredible lives the twins had lived. The entire town pitched in to help. Some volunteered to clean and decorate the local church, where the twins had spent countless Sundays singing hymns. Others brought flowers, baked casseroles, or simply sat with the family, offering silent support. As preparations moved forward, strange things started happening. Candles meant to light up the church would mysteriously flicker out, even though there was no breeze. Doors creaked open on their own, startling those working inside. And sometimes late at night, workers swore they heard faint giggling coming from empty rooms. At first, people brushed it off as stress or exhaustion playing tricks on their minds. After all, everyone was still reeling from the shock of losing the twins. But deep down, some wondered if there was more to it. If maybe, just maybe, the twins were still watching over them in some inexplicable way. The closer they got to the funeral date, the stronger these feelings grew. People talked about it in hushed tones, unsure whether to laugh it off or take it seriously. Whatever was going on, one thing was clear. The twins' presence lingered, not just in memories but in the very fabric of the town itself. And little did anyone know, the most shocking part of their story was yet to unfold. As the days leading up to the funeral passed, the town came together like never before. Preparing for the service wasn't just about organizing an event. It was about creating something meaningful, a tribute that would honor the lives of the twins and give everyone a chance to say goodbye. The local church, where the ceremony was set to take place, became the heart of these efforts. It was the same church where the twins had attended Sunday school as children, sung in the choir, and even helped decorate during festivals. For many, it felt fitting that their final farewell would happen in a place so full of memories. The townspeople poured their hearts into making everything perfect. Some volunteered to clean the church from top to bottom, polishing wooden pews until they gleamed and sweeping away every speck of dust. Others worked tirelessly to arrange flowers, white lilies, the twins' favorite, into bouquets and garlands. The scent of fresh blooms filled the air, mingling with the faint smell of beeswax candles that lined the altar. Someone brought an old photo album filled with pictures of the twins over the years, and another neighbor suggested turning it into a slideshow to play during the service. Photos were scanned, printed, and carefully arranged on boards placed at the entrance of the church. Each image told a story: the twins playing in the park as toddlers, giggling uncontrollably, posing awkwardly in matching dresses during a family vacation, laughing while baking cookies in the kitchen. Every detail mattered because it wasn't just about remembering who the twins were. It was about celebrating how they lived. Their energy, kindness, and laughter had touched so many lives, and now those same lives were coming together to pay tribute. People shared stories as they worked, reminiscing about moments big and small. A shopkeeper recalled how the twins once helped him carry heavy boxes inside his store when he injured his back. An elderly woman smiled through tears as she talked about how they used to visit her every week, bringing homemade treats and sitting by her side. Even the kids in the neighborhood chimed in, talking about the games the twins organized and how they always made sure no one felt left out. These conversations didn't just fill the silence. They kept the twins alive in everyone's hearts, if only for a little while longer. But as much as the preparations brought people closer, there was an undercurrent of unease that no one could quite shake off. Strange things kept happening around the church, things that couldn't easily be explained. One evening, a group of volunteers stayed late to finish decorating. They lit candles along the walls to brighten the space since the sun had already set. But within minutes, the flames began flickering wildly, almost as though someone invisible was blowing on them. One by one, the candles went out, plunging parts of the room into darkness. At first, they thought it might be a draft or faulty wicks, but the windows were shut tight and the air was still. When they relit the candles, the same thing happened again. This time, no one said anything. They simply exchanged uneasy glances and quickly finished their work before heading home. It wasn't just the candles. Doors that had been securely closed would creak open without warning. Footsteps echoed down empty hallways, even though no one was there. And then there were the sounds, soft, distant hums that seemed to float through the air. Some dismissed it as the wind whistling through cracks in the old building, but others swore they recognized the melody. It was a tune the twins used to sing together during choir practice, a cheerful little song that always made people smile. Hearing it now in this context sent shivers down their spines. Despite these odd occurrences, life, or rather, death, had to go on. The parents tried to focus on the practicalities of the funeral, leaning on each other for strength. Planning the burial was particularly difficult. After long discussions, they decided to lay the twins to rest side by side under a single headstone. Engraved on the stone were the words, "Together forever," a phrase that summed up their bond perfectly. For the parents, it was a way to ensure that their daughters would never truly be apart, not even in death. Friends and neighbors pitched in to help design the headstone, choosing simple yet elegant details that reflected the twins' personalities. The night before the funeral, the parents visited the cemetery to see the gravesite for themselves. Standing there under the pale light of the moon, they felt a mix of emotions: grief, love, gratitude, and an overwhelming sense of loss. They placed 2 bouquets of white lilies on the freshly dug earth, whispering prayers and promises to their daughters. As they turned to leave, a gentle breeze rustled the leaves above them, carrying with it the faintest trace of laughter. It was so soft, so fleeting, that they weren't sure if they'd imagined it. But in that moment, surrounded by the quiet beauty of the night, they allowed themselves to believe it was real, a sign that their girls were still with them, watching over them in their own mysterious way. Back at home, the house felt eerily silent. Boxes of condolence cards sat unopened on the dining table, too painful to sort through just yet. Every room held reminders of the twins, their books stacked neatly on shelves, their jackets hanging by the door, their favorite snacks tucked away in the pantry. The parents moved through the house like ghosts themselves, caught between the past and the present, unsure how to move forward. Yet amidst the sadness, there was also a strange kind of comfort. The twins' presence lingered everywhere, in the warmth of the community rallying around them, in the stories people shared, and in the inexplicable events unfolding at the church. Whether it was coincidence, imagination, or something beyond understanding, it gave them hope that love didn't end with death. As dawn broke on the day of the funeral, the town woke up to gray skies and a cool breeze. Rain threatened to fall, but somehow the weather seemed fitting. The mood was somber yet hopeful, heavy with grief yet buoyed by memories. Everyone knew today would be hard, but they also knew it was important to honor the twins, to support the family, and to find closure in whatever way they could. What none of them expected, however, was that the most unforgettable part of the day was still waiting to unfold. The day of the funeral arrived, and the town braced itself for an emotional farewell. From early morning, people began streaming into the church, filling every pew until there was barely room to stand. Some came from nearby towns, others from farther away, all drawn by the story of the twins and the bond they shared. The atmosphere was heavy with sorrow, but it was also filled with love, a collective effort to honor two lives that had touched so many. Inside the church, everything looked beautiful. White lilies overflowed from vases on either side of the altar, their sweet fragrance mingling with the faint scent of polished wood. Photographs of the twins lined the walls, capturing moments frozen in time. Birthday celebrations, school plays, lazy afternoons spent laughing under the sun. A slideshow played softly on a screen near the entrance, accompanied by gentle music that tugged at everyone's heartstrings. Every detail spoke of care and thoughtfulness, a reflection of how deeply the twins were loved. As the service began, the pastor stepped up to the pulpit. His voice trembled slightly as he greeted the crowd, acknowledging the weight of the occasion. He spoke about life, loss, and the enduring power of love, weaving words that resonated deeply with those gathered. "Though we mourn today," he said, "let us not forget the joy these two brought into our lives. Their laughter still echoes in our memories, and their kindness continues to inspire us." His words struck a chord, especially when he recounted stories shared by friends and neighbors. There was the tale of how the twins once organized a surprise birthday party for a lonely classmate, turning what could have been a forgotten day into one of the happiest moments of that child's life. Or the memory of them helping an elderly woman carry groceries home during a rainstorm, refusing to leave until they'd dried off her soaked doorstep. These anecdotes painted a vivid picture of who the twins were, compassionate, selfless, and full of light. But just as the eulogy reached its poignant conclusion, something extraordinary happened. As the pastor paused to take a breath, the ground beneath the church seemed to shift ever so slightly. At first it felt like a tremor, barely noticeable. People exchanged puzzled glances, wondering if it was an earthquake. Then, without warning, the lights dimmed, plunging the room into semi-darkness. Gasps rippled through the congregation as whispers of confusion spread. Was this a power outage? Had something gone wrong? Before anyone could react, a soft, melodic humming filled the silence. It was faint at first, almost like a distant echo, but it grew clearer with each passing second. And then it hit them. The tune was unmistakable. It was the same song the twins used to sing together during choir practice, a cheerful melody that always lifted spirits. Everyone recognized it instantly. Heads turned toward the altar, searching for the source of the sound. But there was no choir, no musicians, nothing that could explain where the music was coming from. The air shimmered faintly, as though reality itself had shifted. Some claimed to see outlines of two figures standing near the pulpit, silhouettes that flickered like candle flames before vanishing completely. Others swore they felt a rush of warmth, as if invisible hands had brushed past them. For a moment, the entire church fell silent, held captive by awe and disbelief. No one dared to move or speak. Even the pastor stood frozen, his Bible clutched tightly in his hands. Tears streamed down faces as people realized what they were witnessing, or at least what they believed they were witnessing. It wasn't fear that gripped them. It was wonder. For many, it felt like the twins were saying goodbye in their own unique way, leaving behind a final gift of comfort and reassurance. When the lights flickered back on moments later, the humming faded into silence, leaving behind only the sound of sniffles and muffled sobs. The spell broke and reality rushed back in. People blinked rapidly, unsure whether what they'd experienced was real or imagined. Yet despite the lingering uncertainty, one thing was clear. Something profound had just occurred. The pallbearers, shaken but resolute, prepared to carry the twin coffins outside for burial. As they lifted the caskets, a hush fell over the crowd once again. Each step felt heavier than usual, as though the weight of grief, and perhaps something more, rested on their shoulders. Outside, the sky remained overcast, but the threatening rain held off, allowing the procession to make its way to the cemetery without interruption. At the gravesite, the mood was somber yet peaceful. Friends and family gathered around the freshly dug plots, holding on to each other for support. The headstone bore the simple inscription, "Together forever." It was a promise kept, a testament to the unbreakable bond the twins shared. As the caskets were lowered into the ground, some threw handfuls of dirt onto them, while others placed flowers atop the wooden boxes. Each gesture was small but significant, a way of saying goodbye while keeping the twins' memory alive. What followed was a blur of emotions. Some people stayed longer than others, lingering by the gravesite as though reluctant to leave. Conversations bubbled up here and there, snippets of memories shared between friends and strangers alike. One man recalled how the twins helped him fix a flat tire one rainy afternoon, refusing to let him drive off until they were sure he was safe. Another woman talked about how they cheered her up after a tough breakup, showing up at her door with homemade cookies and endless encouragement. These stories wove a tapestry of love and connection, reminding everyone present of the impact the twins had made. As the crowd began to disperse, a few lingered behind, unable to tear themselves away. Among them were the parents standing hand in hand beside the graves. They stared at the headstone, their eyes glistening with unshed tears. Though the pain of losing their daughters was still raw, they couldn't deny the sense of peace that washed over them in that moment. Whether it was the presence of friends and neighbors or something deeper, the feeling that their girls were still close, they didn't know. What mattered was that for the first time since the tragedy, they felt a glimmer of hope. And as they finally turned to leave, a single ray of sunlight pierced through the clouds, illuminating the gravesite in a warm golden glow. It was fleeting, lasting only a few seconds before disappearing again. But to those who saw it, it felt like a sign, a quiet reminder that even in the darkest times, light finds a way to shine through. In the days following the funeral, life in the town slowly began to return to some semblance of normalcy. The shock and sorrow that had gripped everyone's hearts started to ease, though the ache of loss remained. People went back to their routines, opening shops, tending gardens, sending kids off to school. But the memory of the twins lingered in every corner of the community. Their absence was felt deeply, not just by their family but by everyone who had known them. For the parents, the pain was still fresh, a constant weight that followed them wherever they went. Every morning brought new waves of grief as they woke up to the silence of an empty house. Gone were the sounds of laughter echoing down the hallway, the clatter of footsteps racing through rooms, and the soft hum of music playing in the background. Even mundane tasks like making coffee or folding laundry felt unbearable because they reminded them of moments shared with their daughters. They spent hours sitting in quiet corners of the house, flipping through old photo albums or watching home videos on repeat, trying to hold on to anything that kept the twins' presence alive. But then, exactly 1 month after the funeral, something extraordinary happened. It started with a simple letter, a plain white envelope slipped into the mailbox alongside bills and flyers. At first glance, it didn't seem unusual. There was no return address, and the handwriting on the front was neat but unfamiliar. When the mother opened it, her hands trembled slightly. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded neatly. She unfolded it carefully, her eyes scanning the words written in elegant script. "Dear Mom and Dad, we're okay. Don't cry for us anymore. We're still together, just like we promised we'd always be. Remember all the happy times we shared? Those moments will never fade. They live on in your hearts. Love you forever." Her breath caught in her throat as she read the note aloud to her husband. Tears streamed down her face as she clutched the paper tightly, half expecting it to vanish into thin air. Her husband stared at the letter, his brow furrowed in disbelief. Neither of them recognized the handwriting, nor could they understand how such a message had ended up in their mailbox. Had someone close to the family sent it as a gesture of comfort? But who? They decided to ask around, showing the letter to friends and neighbors, hoping for answers. To their astonishment, several others reported receiving similar notes. One elderly neighbor found hers tucked under her doormat early that same morning. Another discovered his inside a book he'd borrowed from the library. Each letter was addressed personally, signed simply with the phrase, "From your girls." Some letters included specific memories unique to the recipient, a kind word spoken, a favor done, or a joke shared. It was as if the twins themselves had crafted each note individually, knowing exactly what would bring comfort to those mourning their loss. The mystery deepened when people realized there was no logical explanation for how the letters appeared. Mail carriers swore they hadn't delivered anything unusual, and no one admitted to leaving them behind. Yet, the letters kept turning up, one after another, spreading throughout the town like whispers carried by the wind. For many, these messages became a source of solace. They weren't just pieces of paper. They felt like lifelines thrown across the divide between this world and whatever lay beyond. As word spread about the mysterious letters, conversations turned to speculation. Were they real? Could the twins somehow be reaching out from the other side? Or was it simply a coincidence, a prank played by someone with too much time on their hands? Skeptics dismissed the idea outright, insisting there had to be a rational explanation. Others believed wholeheartedly that the twins were sending signs, reminders that their love transcended death. Arguments broke out in coffee shops and grocery store aisles, with people passionately defending their views. But regardless of where they stood, everyone agreed on one thing. The letters sparked something powerful within the community. What made the phenomenon even more intriguing were the stories that accompanied the letters. A young boy claimed he saw two figures walking hand in hand near the cemetery late one night. He described them as glowing faintly, almost like fireflies. His parents initially brushed it off as a child's imagination running wild. But when they visited the gravesite the next day, they found fresh flowers placed neatly on the headstone, flowers neither of them had brought. Another woman recounted hearing giggling coming from the twins' old bedroom when she stopped by the house to check on the grieving parents. She walked in to investigate, only to find the room empty, yet the sound lingered in the air like an echo. Even the pastor, who had always approached matters of faith with caution, couldn't ignore the mounting evidence. He remembered scriptures about love being stronger than death, and wondered if the twins' bond was proof of that truth. During Sunday service, he spoke openly about the letters and the strange occurrences, urging the congregation to focus on the message rather than the method. Whether these are signs from beyond or acts of kindness from our fellow townsfolk, he said, they remind us of one undeniable fact. The twins' love lives on. Let's honor that love by continuing to care for each other. Inspired by his words, people began sharing their own experiences. Neighbors hosted gatherings where they read the letters aloud, recounting cherished memories of the twins. Kids in the neighborhood organized a mural project, painting vibrant scenes of the twins' favorite activities on a blank wall near the park. Older residents started volunteering more often, inspired by the twins' habit of helping anyone in need. Slowly but surely, the sadness that had hung over the town began to lift, replaced by a renewed sense of connection and purpose. For the parents, the letters provided a small measure of peace. Though they still missed their daughters desperately, they took comfort in knowing that their legacy continued to inspire others. Each note served as a reminder that the twins' impact reached far beyond their short lives. And while questions about the origin of the letters remained unanswered, the parents chose to focus on the message rather than the mystery. One evening, as they sat together on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, the father turned to his wife. "Do you think it's really them?" he asked softly, his voice tinged with both hope and doubt. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she held up the letter they'd received, tracing the words with her fingers. "I don't know," she finally said. "But does it matter? Whether it's them or someone else, the point is, they're still here. In our hearts, in the way people talk about them, in the kindness they inspired. That's what keeps them alive." Her words hung in the air, carrying a weight of truth that neither of them could deny. As darkness fell and the stars began to twinkle above, they sat quietly, holding on to each other, and to the belief that love, no matter how fleeting, leaves an imprint that never fades. As weeks turned into months, the strange events surrounding the twins' deaths began to weave themselves deeper into the fabric of the town. The mysterious letters continued to appear sporadically, each one carrying a message that seemed tailor-made for its recipient. Some people received multiple notes while others got only one, but no matter how many times they arrived or who they were meant for, the letters always left the same impression: comfort, warmth, and an unshakable sense of connection. The stories kept coming too, whispers of sightings, fleeting encounters, and inexplicable happenings that defied logic. A local shopkeeper reported hearing faint giggling late at night when he locked up his store. At first, he thought it was kids playing pranks, but when he stepped outside to investigate, the street was empty. Another resident claimed she saw two shadowy figures walking hand in hand near the cemetery under the light of a full moon. They disappeared before she could get a closer look, leaving behind only the faint scent of flowers in the air. These tales spread quickly, sparking debates among townsfolk. Skeptics argued that grief had clouded people's judgment, causing them to see things that weren't really there. "It's just our minds trying to make sense of something we can't understand," one man said during a heated discussion at the diner. On the other side were those who believed wholeheartedly in the supernatural. "You can't explain everything with science," countered a woman whose daughter swore she'd been visited by the twins in a dream. "Some things are bigger than us." Despite the differing opinions, one thing remained clear. The twins' presence was felt everywhere. Their memory became a thread that stitched the community together, binding people through shared experiences and emotions. Strangers struck up conversations about the letters they'd received or the odd occurrences they'd witnessed. Old friendships were rekindled, and new ones formed as people leaned on each other for support. In a way, the twins' legacy wasn't just about loss, it was also about unity. The parents found themselves at the center of this growing phenomenon. Though they still struggled with their grief, they noticed subtle changes in how they viewed the world around them. Every morning, they woke up expecting another wave of sadness, yet more often than not, they felt a quiet strength instead. It wasn't overwhelming or dramatic. It was small, like the warmth of sunlight streaming through the window or the sound of birds chirping outside. They couldn't explain it, but they knew it was tied to their daughters somehow. One crisp autumn evening, they decided to visit the cemetery again. It had become a habit of sorts, a way to feel close to the twins, even if it meant confronting the pain of their absence. As they approached the gravesite, they noticed something unusual. Fresh flowers had been placed atop the headstone, though neither of them had brought any. The blooms looked vibrant, almost unnaturally so, as if they'd been picked moments earlier. Someone must have come here recently, they thought. But who? Standing there, surrounded by the quiet beauty of the cemetery, they felt an overwhelming sense of peace wash over them. For the first time since losing their daughters, they didn't feel alone. It was as if the twins were standing right beside them, holding their hands and whispering words of reassurance. Tears streamed down their faces, but they weren't tears of sorrow. They were tears of gratitude. Gratitude for having known such extraordinary girls, even if only for a short time. Back at home, they sat together in the living room, flipping through old photo albums. Each picture brought back a flood of memories, their daughter's laughter, their mischievous grins, the way they finished each other's sentences. But instead of feeling weighed down by grief, they found themselves smiling through their tears. These weren't just reminders of what they'd lost. They were testaments to the incredible lives their daughters had lived. Word of the ongoing mysteries eventually reached neighboring towns, drawing curious visitors eager to learn more about the twins' story. Some came out of morbid curiosity, hoping to catch a glimpse of something supernatural. Others arrived seeking solace, inspired by tales of the twins' enduring bond. The cemetery became a kind of pilgrimage site, with people leaving tokens of remembrance, flowers, candles, handwritten notes at the foot of the headstone. Over time, the area transformed into a colorful mosaic of tributes, each one adding to the growing tapestry of love and admiration. Even skeptics couldn't deny the impact the twins had on the community. What started as a tragedy had evolved into something far greater, a testament to the power of human connection. People who had once drifted apart found themselves reconnecting, drawn together by shared memories and mutual respect. Acts of kindness multiplied, inspired by the twins' selflessness. Neighbors helped each other without hesitation, strangers smiled at one another on the street, and children played freely in the park, echoing the joy the twins had once brought to the town. The pastor noticed the shift during his sermons. Attendance at Sunday services increased, not because people were searching for answers, but because they wanted to celebrate life. He spoke often about the twins, using their story as a reminder that love transcends boundaries, even death itself. We may never fully understand what happened, he told the congregation one Sunday morning, but does it really matter? What matters is how we choose to honor their memory. Let's carry their spirit forward by being kinder, gentler, and more compassionate toward one another. His words resonated deeply with everyone present. After the service, groups gathered in the churchyard, sharing stories and laughter. Kids chased each other around the playground, their shouts mingling with the rustle of leaves overhead. Life moved on as it always does, but it did so with a renewed sense of purpose. The twins' influence lingered in every act of kindness, every heartfelt conversation, every moment of connection. For the parents, watching the town come alive again was both bittersweet and healing. They missed their daughters more than words could express, but they took comfort in knowing that their legacy lived on, not just in memories, but in the way people treated one another. Love, it seemed, had a way of spreading far beyond its source, touching hearts and changing lives in ways no one could have predicted. And then, one chilly winter morning, something unexpected happened. The mother stepped outside to fetch the newspaper and froze in her tracks. There, lying neatly on the porch railing, was another letter. Her breath caught in her throat as she picked it up, recognizing the familiar handwriting immediately. This time. The message inside was different. Dear Mom and Dad, thank you for loving us enough to let us go. We're happy, and will always be with you, in your hearts, in the wind, in the stars above. Keep smiling, keep living, and remember, love never dies. She read the note aloud to her husband, her voice trembling with emotion. Neither of them spoke for a long time, letting the words sink in. Finally, he reached out and took her hand, squeezing it gently. They're still here, he whispered, in everything. That day, as snowflakes began to fall softly from the sky, the couple stood together on the porch, watching the world transform into a sparkling wonderland. For the first time in months, they didn't feel consumed by sadness. Instead, they felt hope, a quiet, steady belief that love endures even in the face of unimaginable loss. And as they stood there, hand in hand, they knew one thing for certain. the twins' bond would continue to inspire and unite the town for generations to come. As the seasons changed and spring gave way to summer, the town began to settle into a new rhythm. Life went on, as it always does, but the memory of the twins remained woven into its very fabric. The mysterious letters stopped appearing after that last note on the winter morning, leaving behind a sense of quiet resolution. People didn't question why. They simply accepted it as part of the story, another chapter in the extraordinary legacy left behind by the girls who had touched so many lives. The cemetery where the twins were laid to rest became more than just a gravesite. It evolved into a place of reflection and connection. Every day visitors came, some bearing flowers, others with nothing but their thoughts. Strangers sat together on the benches nearby, sharing stories about how the twins had impacted their lives. Kids played tag among the trees, their laughter mingling with the rustle of leaves, creating a symphony of joy and remembrance. It was as though the twins' spirit had infused the entire space, turning it into a sanctuary for anyone seeking comfort or inspiration. For the parents, visiting the cemetery became less about mourning and more about celebration. They no longer dreaded the walk through the gates or the sight of the headstone engraved with those two simple words, "Together forever." Instead, they found solace in sitting beside the grave, talking aloud as if the twins were still there listening. Sometimes they'd recount funny anecdotes from the past. The time one twin tried to teach the other how to ride a bike, only for both of them to end up covered in mud. Other times they'd share updates about life in the town, describing how neighbors were helping each other, or how kids at the park laughed just like their daughters used to. One warm afternoon, as they sat under the shade of an old oak tree near the gravesite, something unusual caught their attention. Two birds perched atop the headstone, chirping softly in harmony. Their feathers shimmered in the sunlight, almost glowing against the gray stone. The parents watched in silence, mesmerized by the scene. It wasn't the first time they'd seen birds around the cemetery, but this felt different. These two seemed perfectly synchronized, moving in tandem as though connected by some invisible thread. For a moment, the world around them faded away, leaving only the sound of the birdsong and the gentle breeze rustling through the branches above. When the birds finally flew off, disappearing into the horizon, the mother turned to her husband with tears glistening in her eyes. "Do you think," she began, her voice trailing off. She didn't need to finish the sentence. He nodded slowly, understanding exactly what she meant. Whether it was coincidence or something more profound didn't matter anymore. What mattered was the feeling that lingered, the certainty that their daughter's bond endured even beyond death. Back at home, the house began to feel less empty. The parents started rediscovering pieces of themselves they thought they'd lost forever. Simple joys returned, baking cookies on a rainy afternoon, planting flowers in the garden, flipping through photo albums without breaking down in tears. Each activity carried echoes of the twins, but instead of intensifying the pain, these reminders brought warmth. They realized that grief wasn't something you got over. It was something you learned to carry differently, finding moments of light amidst the shadows. The community continued to honor the twins in countless ways. A local artist painted a mural in the park, depicting scenes from the twins' life, running through fields, reading books under a tree, holding hands as they walked home from school. Beneath the vibrant colors, a plaque read, "In loving memory of two souls who taught us the meaning of love and connection." Children loved playing in front of the mural, pointing out details and imagining what it must have been like to know such special people. Every year on the anniversary of their passing, the town held a gathering at the cemetery. Neighbors brought food, music filled the air, and stories flowed freely. It wasn't a somber occasion. It was a celebration of life, love, and everything the twins represented. One year, someone suggested releasing balloons into the sky, each one carrying a handwritten message tied to its string. Hundreds of balloons floated upward, painting the sky with bursts of color. As they disappeared into the clouds, a cheer rose from the crowd below, a collective acknowledgement that while the twins might be gone, their impact would never fade. Even skeptics softened over time. Those who had once dismissed the strange events as mere coincidences found themselves unable to ignore the tangible changes in the town's atmosphere. Friendships deepened, acts of kindness multiplied, and people approached life with a renewed appreciation for its fleeting beauty. Some credited the twins directly, believing their presence lingered in every good deed and heartfelt conversation. Others chalked it up to human resilience, the way tragedy can sometimes bring out the best in people. Either way, the outcome was undeniable. The town had transformed. Years passed, and the twins' story became legend. New families moved into the area, drawn by tales of the inseparable sisters whose love transcended even death. Older residents passed down memories to younger generations, ensuring that the twins' legacy would endure long after everyone who knew them personally was gone. The cemetery remained a cherished landmark, visited not just by locals but by travelers from faraway places, hoping to catch a glimpse of the magic that seemed to hover over the town. For the parents, growing older brought a mix of emotions. On one hand, they missed their daughters more than ever, longing for the chance to see them grow into adulthood. On the other hand, they took pride in knowing that their daughter's influence lived on, not just in their hearts, but in the lives of countless others. They often joked that the twins were probably still causing mischief somewhere, laughing as loudly as ever. And whenever doubt crept in, all they had to do was look around, at the mural in the park, the notes tucked into books, the smiles exchanged between strangers, to know that their girls were still here, watching over them in their own unique way. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in hues of orange and purple, the father stood on the porch with his wife by his side. He glanced toward the cemetery in the distance, then back at the house filled with memories. "You know," he said softly, "I don't think we'll ever really understand what happened. Maybe that's okay?" She nodded, resting her head on his shoulder. "We don't have to understand everything," she replied. "All we need to know is that they're still with us, in every laugh, every kind word, every moment of connection. That's how they'll always be alive." And with that, they stepped inside, closing the door behind them. Outside, the wind picked up slightly, carrying with it the